トビデオ
Alright, so recap time. As you know, I love the Slayers franchise. It's a fantasy anime series that explores classic sword and sorcery style quests with interesting world building and solid comedy to spice it all up, especially the comedy.
Koala.
The Slayers franchise is so immense that it not only spans 5 seasons of anime, but also an entire run of movies. While the anime series adapts the mainline books, the movies instead choose to adapt the spin-off prequel series Slayers Special. They are entries that focus more on the comedy portion of the fantasy comedy genre in following the adventures of our favorite sorceress Lena Inverse and her fellow sorceress slash bitter rival, the arrogant and ample-bosomed Naga the Serpent. Last year, we covered the first entry. It's a serviceable primer in what you're getting into when you watch the Slayers movies. Whereas the TV show is still focused on delivering a gripping fantasy adventure story while still delivering the laughs, the movie is all about the laughs. They are essentially Laurel and Hardy joints, but instead of 2 men from the 30s, they are greedy anime sorceresses sharing one brain between the 2 of them. Not the most spectacular things in spite of the theatrical level budget, but it's good as any to keep you entertained.
Take wine, not war. The untainted feet of sweet virgins produces the sweetest blend.
God help me!
Slayers the Motion Picture, or Slayers Perfect if you so prefer, was naturally a success. And just like with the TV series, there was a quick turnaround to produce a follow-up, and fast. So on August 3rd, 1996, the same year Slayers Next came out, the Slayers franchise made its grand return to the silver screen with, Slayers Return. We return to our dumbass sorceresses eating a hearty steak dinner, Naga foolishly stealing off Lena's plate, and the 2 of them getting into an argument that ends with Lena blowing up the entire restaurant with a spell. The explosion attracts the attention of an injured young woman named Selena. While taking her in to heal, thinking that she was a bystander caught up in their destructive food fight, Selena reveals that she was injured a few days ago when she escaped her village. Said village has been taken over by the evil Zine organization, and has been using demons to enslave the townspeople to dig up a treasure. She asked the 2 sorceresses to help free her village. Normally, when confronted with such a request, Lena would be asking for some kind of payment up front because we all know she doesn't do this adventuring for free. But she takes Selena up on her offer, no questions asked. This is actually just a cover since Lena, being her usual greedy self, has heard rumors of an ancient elven treasure buried nearby that village, an artifact made entirely of the incredibly rare, incredibly resilient, and incredibly valuable magical metal known as Orichalcon, so valuable that Lena cannot afford to divulge this information to her equally greedy partner in crime, Naga, who's already raising suspicious eyebrows at Lena's sudden change of heart. When the trio arrives at the aggressed village, they discover that the treasure the Zine organization has forcibly volunteered the town to dig up is the treasure that Lena was also hoping to get her grubby mitts on. Will our nominal heroes save the day? What exactly is the secret of this buried treasure? And is the Zine organization every bit of the shadowy evil organization that it seems? So when I was prepping for this episode, I was doing the usual thing of reading reviews from anime magazines and websites back when this film got released over here. And I found something interesting. Slayers Return is an anime film that came very highly recommended from the big contemporary anime critics at the time. ANN Zach Birchie referred to it as one of the classics and a perfect time capsule for anime of the mid-90s. Fellow writer Daryl Surratt, in his retrospective on the best anime of the year 1996, also named it as one of the greats, and referred to it as his personal favorite of the Slayers franchise. It should be observed that Surratt ranked Return alongside other classic 1996 animes such as Gundam the 8th MS Team, Vision of Escaflowne, the final season of Sailor Moon, and the long-running Detective Conan series. While professional critics aren't the official measures of quality, words from them do carry a lot of weight. And being that I too am a critic who also believes their words carry noticeable weight, I'd like to get in on this. Is Slayer's Return really the best of the Slayers movies? Well, memorize your Dragon Slave incantations and strap on your leather bra that can barely contain your massive Naga tits.
Behold my tremendous powers!
It's time to make our yearly return to the Slayers franchise with Slayer's Return. Boy, I really am having fun with the wordplay in this episode. I won't go too much into the production details of this anime because, frankly, there's not a lot to be said. Just like with the last movie, this was produced by JC staff, distributed by Toei, and retained a lot of the staff in between films. Director Hiroshi Watanabe has been kept on board, so has writer of the original Slayers novels, Hajime Kanzaka, who returns as screenwriter. And along with the main Slayers character designer, Ruri Araizumi, animation director Takehiro Yoshimatsu, and art director Hiroshi Kato. But there was one shakeup to the crew, and it's one that you definitely feel on screen. The chief director position went from Kazuo Yamazaki to Kunihiko Yuyama. We've talked about Yuyama before, how he got his start as director of Studio Ashi's big projects in the early 80s, before moving to the tragically troubled Konami Productions, where he directed the stunningly gorgeous fantasy OVA, Leda, The Fantastic Adventures of Yoko. He most likely came aboard Slayer's Return just as he was wrapping up direction on the Magical Girl series, Wedding Peach. One last thing to mention before we discuss the actual anime. Slayer's Return was a theatrically released film, but being that its runtime is an even 60 minutes, it had to have a unique release situation. That situation was that it was a double feature paired up with another movie called X. I'll assuredly get into X one of these days since it's one of those retro anime titles you can't not talk about, but to put it into perspective why this was such an odd and incredibly dissonant marketing decision, it would be like Studio Ghibli releasing My Neighbor Totoro with Grave of the Fireflies, which is something they totally did. Now, considering that this is a comedy movie, I should warn you that a lot of the appeal of this movie lies in not knowing how the whole plot and jokes play out beforehand. So if you really want to get into this movie cold, I would suggest pausing this video, tracking the anime down on YouTube, and coming back in an hour after watching. I say this because I am busting this anime wide open and leaving no stone unturned when talking about why this is the best Slayers movie. Starting with the animation. Slayers Perfect already had laudable animation firmly in its pockets, so it's even more impressive that Slayers Return outpaces it full stop. From the word go, Yuyama's staff is pulling out their weapons to make the animation of this movie feel like a goddamn movie. The first scene with Lena and Naga fighting over a piece of steak is just a stellar scene animation-wise, starting from the delicious-looking steak lovingly drenched in sauce. It then turns into a comical argument between the two characters that feels reminiscent of the pasta fight scene in Castle of Cagliostro, except I don't think it ends with Lubon blowing up the restaurant in such a wonderfully destructive manner.
Again, just pathetic! Trying to assassinate me with your silly blast!
And the best part about that scene is that it's probably the least interesting set piece the anime has. From that point onward, the animated set pieces just get bigger and better and more fantastically complicated as the film rolls on. The fight scenes especially seem to really build on what was established with Perfect. There is no skimping on Lena and Naga's spellcasting animation, with the effects delivering the mass destruction in their wake. We actually get to see a demon's soul get extracted and erased by a spell. That is hardcore. And Yuyama's magnificent storyboarding shows us that he is unafraid to really mix up the fighting scenes the sorcerers are involved in. He gets them involved in a lot of close combat situations, so we get to see Naga utilize some martial arts skills, and oh snap, we get to see Lena actually use that sword she's been carrying on her person this entire time. And it still finds a way to outdo all that in the back half of the anime when the treasure is finally unearthed. The treasure, it turns out, is actually a gigantic monster made out of the rare metal, and the movie becomes a kaiju picture from that point onward. Some might critique this section of the anime since half of it is just Lena and Naga running from the monster as it destroys a town, but come on. The destruction animation is just delicious, and isn't that what we want out of our kaiju media?
Everybody out of the way! Sorry,
Excusez-moi,
please,
madame, we do not allow people simply to run through.
Yo! But even when things in the anime settle down and we get some downtime in the anime, there is still great creativity emanating from the animators. Hiroshi Kato's backdrops feel somehow more lush than they were in Perfect. The forests feel greener, and the water of the lakes and rivers sparkle more. I think it really shows a good juxtaposition of how this idyllic village the two sorceresses are tasked to save have had their lives turned upside down by the appearance of the Zion organization and the aforementioned sorceresses. Araizumi puts in good work in designing the new characters for this movie. Serena is instantly memorable, and not just because of her blue hair, but because Araizumi gives her a look that's demure, but still someone who also wishes she could be stronger.
Come back here, you coward! Selena, no! We'll take care of him later!
And big compliments to him designing every one of the design organization's henchmen who, despite being incredibly minor characters, are all weird, unique designs that tell you a lot about what their moveset is at first glance. Even the lighting in some scenes are done well with how they give scenes a certain emotional weight to them. I've heard some people say that this decision makes some of these scenes appear to look washed out, but it's alright in my book. But it is amusing that this anime does go out of its way to set up this dramatic lighting when Slayer's Return might just be one of the least dramatic anime films I have ever laid my eyes on. And I'm pretty sure that's the point.
This must be a sign from the heavens. I think the gods are saying that the bracelet is meant for my arm. Naga, you're such a moron!
So if you watched any of my previous videos on Slayers, or remember what I said at the beginning of this video, you do know that one of the reasons I've praised this franchise is how it can effortlessly balance silly comedy and serious high fantasy and not feel tonally dissonant. The Slayers movies, as I've stated previously, leaning more into the comedy realm. But there's a part of me that feels like what makes Slayer's Return work is that it assumes you know how the Slayers formula operates tonally. You come in expecting it to have a few jokey jokes here and there, but will ultimately know when to pull back in order to have some high fantasy adventure and all that jazz. And for the first 15 minutes or so, it does look like it's going for that standard Slayers fare. Sure, you have comedic moments like the aforementioned food fight scene and the part where Naga gets a magic bracelet stuck on her wrist, which will be a surprise tool for later, but it does carry itself like it's gonna be a straightforward adventure with Lena and Naga defeating a shadowy evil overlord. But then, Lena and Naga are guided to the location that is said to be the Zion organization's headquarters. And this is where the film takes a turn. So it turns out that the leader of the Zion organization, Galev, drove himself into bankruptcy trying to be an evil overlord. I guess in the Slayers universe, trying to be an evil overlord is a lot like getting into cryptocurrency.
Yes, our headquarters are modest, and right now, only 2 people make up the group. Sure, we struggle to find our next meal, and we have no money, and as if that weren't enough, my ungrateful wife has run off with my child in tow!
You ever hear of getting a real job?
And I gotta give a shout out to Jason Douglas, Beerus himself, in voicing Galev. It's the perfect hammy villain role, menacing, but can easily transition into clownish tomfoolery.
Impervious to all magic, it shall also be impervious to any spells that attempt to control it. Therefore, we are sealing it and burying it for all time.
But this is really all what Slayer's Return becomes at this point, delicately setting up scenarios that trick you into thinking that this is going to be the moment where the movie takes itself a bit more seriously, and then wham! It pulls the rug right out from under you. Shortly after his introduction, Galev decides to fight back against Lena and Naga by casting a spell of its own. According to Naga, it's an ancient forbidden spell of dark magic that is all but implied to summon a meteor from outer space to crush the 2 sorceresses. And after a lengthy bit of setup, we get this.
Oh, please let me win this battle. Please let me win this battle. Please let me win. Shoot! I didn't get to say it 3 whole times.
It's classic comedy right here. Everything is built on misleading the audience, and it works every single time. Even if I did find myself wising up near the end of it, Slayer's Return just found new and inventive ways to keep throwing me for a loop each and every time. Another example. A big plot point throughout the first half of the movie is Galev summoning his army of colorful henchmen from around the land to aid in the fights. Once they finally get into town, they end up having a fight with Naga. So you expect them to be some pretty tough customers and more obstacle in Lena's way to saving the day, and more importantly, the treasure. But once Galev announces his presence to the henchmen of the so-called Zion organization, they all stride over to him with a determined look on their faces and beat the ever-loving brakes off Galev like he owes them money. No, seriously, the reason for this impromptu stomp reenactment is because Galev, being very much his own crypto boss, hasn't paid the money owed to them for their labor. God, isn't that just like a startup business?
We came because Golif owes us money and we owe him a beating, and we always pay our debt.
Though humor is the main focus and appeal of Slayer's return, it's not like it's bereft of any tension that lessens the action on screen. The whole climax with the Orihaucon kaiju is basically a puzzle boss for Lena. Because it's made out of Orihaucon, Lena can't use her Dragon Slave on it like usual. So now she has to figure out a different way she can dispose of this monster before it destroys everything. It's easier said than done because remember that bracelet that Naga can't get off her wrist? Well, it turns out that it's also made out of Orihaucon, and it's like a magnet to the monster.
Not exactly. It's really after this bracelet. The creature is designed to go after whoever wears the enchanted bracelet.
So now Lena and Naga have to figure out how to take out a gigantic enemy that's immune to all of their attacks while it is chasing them the entire time. And of course, the anime does find its way to work in a few more gags. They do end up figuring out how to beat the monster, but that part I won't spoil because it's honestly quite ingenious on Lena's part, and also is a gloriously animated set piece that you should see for yourself. But yeah, critics were right. This is totally the best Slayers movie by a country mile. So far anyways, that could change with future movies, but for now, it's the best. With Slayers the motion picture, the foundation was there to build on a solid prequel series. But while it does have a lot of what makes Return work, it also feels very unfocused in its execution, and the team doesn't appear to have the confidence in delivering a feature-length Slayers movie. That has changed with Return. The team clearly knows what it wants from a Slayers movie now. It's now a concept that's executed with laser precision, and not a single bit of the hour runtime feels wasted. Unsurprisingly, the method of exploiting people's knowledge of how Slayers shifts in tones to better deliver misleading jokes is the kind of formula that you would see in future fantasy comedy anime like Konosuba, tricking you into thinking the silly comedy has gotten serious for a moment before throwing a massive left hook of a punchline.
まずはその針金で牢屋の鍵を開けなさい。その後はカズマの潜伏スキルを使って署内から脱出するな。
ダイヤル式じゃねえか。
But Slayer's Return did it earlier, and they did it with such finesse. I cannot recommend this film enough. Maybe future Slayers films could conceivably surpass Return, but that's a question we will be answering when we return to the franchise next year. One more bit of wordplay for the road.